Okay.
So this is the education session for Integrity Capital. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about title insurance, which is a really big deal for everybody to understand all the elements that we can about title and how we can productively work with the title company. And I'm really excited that we have with us today our Linda Navarrete, if I'm saying that correctly, apologize if I'm not, who is with Lawyers Title. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, Arlinda, thank you so much for coming on
Oh, my
today.
pleasure.
So, why don't you dive in and start educating us on title insurance?
Sure. So, I guess one of the question is, what is title insurance?
Hmm.
So title insurance is basically a form of insurance that protects buyers and lenders against any kind of loss due to defects relating to the property.
Hmm.
Defects such as an old encumbrance that was never paid off, liens or judgments that were missed that weren't paid off.
Hmm.
And as far as how does the title policy work? So the policy is an indemnification against loss to the insured. So it indemnifies the buyers and or the lenders. And the indemnification is limited to items that are covered risk and are subject to pre-printed conditions that are on our jacket policies, which I can send you a policy jacket that you guys can read what all the covered exceptions are. And then in addition, it also covers a policy against any additional exceptions that were not disclosed through a search, again, through the public records, such as if the borrower had a judgment. So if the insured was to suffer a loss that was deemed coverable under the policy, then we would be responsible to cure that defect or pay any money to cover any losses that fall within the scope, of the terms of the title policy.
So the exceptions, walk us through exceptions then. What exactly is an exception to the policy?
Exceptions to policies are the CC&Rs, which are the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that are recorded against the property. Exceptions would be any assessments that are against the policy, such as the homeowner association, property taxes. If people live in an area where they pay special assessments to the city. An exception would also be any easements that may be recorded against the property, such as easements for public utilities. I think those really are the main ones that the exceptions that are to the policy.
What that means is if I'm getting a title policy and I'm the lender or the borrower, you're saying we're gonna insure this, all these potential defects or things that pop up after the fact, except for these. Is that a fair way to say it?
Not items that are post-closing.
Okay.
When we issue title insurance, we, such as to a buyer, we're issue them a policy that they have a free and clear marketable title, because buyers can do things to their title post-closing that wouldn't be covered. This is everything up to the date that they take possession or they, obtain title to the property. The same for the lender. It's up to the day that we record their deed of trust. It doesn't cover anything that happens after the deed of trust has been recorded.
And are there limitations on those? I know like on insurance policies, a lot of times they'll have limitations. Is there limitations on the policy?
There are limitations. Some of the limitations, I believe, on the jacket policy is is whatever the customer is maybe out of pocket. Maybe you have a title policy for $500,000, but the claim is only for $10,000. That's how much would be paid.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And what is the, like if I'm opening title, and obviously we kind of understand what a title policy is, and what is the most effective way for someone such as ourselves to work with you in giving you the appropriate information you need in order to properly open title?
The information that's most important to open the title would be to, find out from your borrower how they hold title to the property. As many of them are in entities, or they may hold it as individuals. A good address, if you have a parcel number. And then if they have any payoffs, or there might be potential that there could be judgments against the property that we need to look for. Those types of items, if you have that information up front, is fantastic.
That's great. And then walk us through the life cycle of the title process. So somebody opens title, they're buying a property. When they call you and do that, what exactly are you doing next? Do you have like a department that you go ahead and they generate this preliminary title report? Maybe you could kind of walk us through each step and then we can ask some questions.
Yeah, so once I receive an email requesting a commitment or a title report, I enter it in my system, and then I forward the information to our title department. And from there, our title department, it first goes to a title examiner who will go, we tell them, search the property and pull all the information that they can find, which is who the vested owner is, if there are any open liens, judgments, deeds of trust against the property, what covenants, conditions, restrictions, the CC&Rs, easements, and then they prepare a title report. And then that title report is released back to me, and I'll forward out to you for review. So then once we actually start going through the process, then it goes to a title officer. If there's any questions as far as title requirements, or if you feel there's something on there, or the borrower says that, oh no, this should not be on there, then a title examiner will look at that further and determine whether or not it is a valid requirement and or exception on the commitment.
And if we're ordering title, what is a realistic time frame to get a preliminary title report back from the underwriter?
Well, that's a hot topic right now with title insurance. Honestly, commercial title policies are running anywhere right now from 10 to 15 days.
Wow.
They used to only be about 5 to 7 days. But with the way the business is booming and as busy as everybody is, that's how long they're taking right now. And that's average, because with other title companies also.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So once you get it back, this preliminary title report, what exactly is going to be on it?
So on the title report, the first information, which we call Schedule A, that outlines who the proposed insured is going to be. So the proposed insured would be the lender's name and or a buyer. The liability amount, so the amount of the loan and or the amount of a sales price, along with who the fee title holder is, or who the current vested owner is. And then as a lender, you should review it, look through it, make sure your name's right, the liability amounts are right. You'll see the legal description on there. And then we fall into Schedule B, Part 1, our title requirements. So the requirements are, items that need to be cleared. It might state on there that there's outstanding or there's taxes that need to be paid. Or it'll show if there's a current lien or deed of trust against the property that needs to be paid off. Or if somebody has a tax lien or a judgment against them, that'll be under the requirements that'll also need to be searched and cleared prior to closing.
So
And then the next part of, go ahead.
just to be clear, so Schedule Bs are almost just a checklist of things that need to be done before they can close.
Yeah, Schedule B, Part 1 are items that need to be taken care of. Because then you also have a Schedule B, Part 2. And Part 2 are the exceptions to the title policy. And those are the items that will reflect on your loan policy.
What is Schedule A? Where is it?
Yeah, Schedule A is the first part of the title report. Again, that shows who the proposed insureds are. So the proposed lender's name, buyer's name if it's a sale. And then it also shows on there who the current owner is.
Got it.
Arlinda, one question for you. This is Tom Harchie. On Schedule B, Part 2, is it correct that sometimes there's exceptions on there that can still have like items to be addressed? Like, there's like on the Schedule B, Part 1, it's going to be, if there's like a statement of information needed, or a judgment or something like that. But on Part B, I think on Part 2, that's where we'll see there's an exception to coverage unless this document's provided, like a survey or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And normally when we do just loan policies, a lot of time a survey is not required unless you want us to insure or endorse over a survey matter. Otherwise, we don't require a survey to issue a loan policy.
What do you mean by going over a survey? What does that mean?
So the clients will have a surveyor will go out and survey the property. And on the survey, he'll show any easements, if there's any possible encroachments against the property, all easements, where the building is located. So that's the type of items that are on a survey. And when it's provided to us, the title officer will take that survey and compare it to the exceptions that are shown on the title report.
Got it. So is it safe to assume that who's the one that makes the decision whether a survey is ordered? Is it like under certain stipulations, the lender says, hey, we need this kind of coverage. And then you say, well, if we're going to do that, we have to have a survey?
If a lender wants a coverage against over a survey exception, so say on the survey it showed that there was an easement on there. A lot of times the lender will say we would like to issue an endorsement over the easement, and then title may require to look at a survey
Okay.
to whether or not we would issue that endorsement to the policy.
How old typically does a survey have to be, or how new does it have to be for you to accept it for those kinds of things? I mean, is
Well,
it?
if a customer has a prior survey, I'm not certain as how old. I've seen them as old as like 2-3 years, but as long as the customer is willing to sign a no change affidavit, that there's been no changes to the property, we will accept that together with that old survey.
Got it. And so where do you see most of the problems that people run into when they're trying to get title closed up and wrapped up? Is it particular consistent themes that you generally see that hold up things from getting closed, or what's been your experience?
Not receiving title requirements such as the entity documents. So depending on the type of entity it is, depends on the type of documents we require. If it's an LLC, we need a copy of filed articles, if they have an operating agreement and a good standing. If it's a corporation, we would need a copy of their bylaws and a resolution signed by an officer of the company that states who's authorized to sign on behalf of the company. So that could be a big holdup of receiving the entity documents. And then title requirements, sometimes if we have to order a payoff, many times the lender requires written authorization. So we reach out to the clients and, sometimes they're not very quick in getting that back to us so that we can obtain payoffs.
Great.
So those type of items.
And how do you,
Sometimes there's a, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, sometimes you'll see a requirement such as, we need a corrective deed. Because for title insuring purposes, we don't insure deeds, quitclaim deeds that were recorded, because they don't warrant the title. So the person they're just giving the title over and they're not warranting against any defects, assessments, or anything against the property. They're just saying, here's the property, and whatever's against it, you're stuck with that in essence. So many times you'll see that we require a corrective deed where we have to get a new warranty deed signed by that person to correct that prior deed that has been recorded or put of record. So that may mean that that client needs to go back to whoever it was that gave them the deed, if it wasn't an insured transaction.
And what are the typical fees generally for title? What are the general charges and how do they typically determine them?
We have filed rates. So all our rates are filed with the Department of Insurance. So for an owner's policy, it's based on the sales price. For a lender policy, it's based on the loan amount. So typical, say on just a loan policy, if we were doing a loan transaction, you will see that there's an escrow fee, a lender's policy, any endorsements that the lender may require to the title policy, inspection fee, if you require a closing protection letter, and recording fee. Those are the main fees that are in a loan transaction.
And what would you say, if you're describing, is the title's job to just take, be this kind of independent intermediary fiduciary that, acts as a neutral third party to close a loan? Is that a safe?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, we need to stay neutral. So if we have a sale transaction, we have to stay neutral, between the seller and the buyer. They're the principals to the transaction.
Okay.
Or in the case of a loan, it would be the borrower would be the principal and the lender.
That's great.
But when we have a sale, a lender's not considered a principal to the transaction. It's the seller and the buyer.
That makes sense. Is there anything that we haven't asked that you think would be important for us to know or understand as it pertains to title?
No, I think, no, I believe we've covered it all, unless you have some specific questions that I can try to answer. And if not, I can always find out the information for you and let you know.
No, I think
But
this,
as far as the lender, looking at your requirements and your exceptions, as soon as you get the title report, is a huge help for us.
yeah, that makes total sense. Do you see any major changes happen in title that are coming down the pike that could be impactful or not?
No, we hear that there's going to be the type of policies we issue, but I believe it might be more to sales, like the homeowner's policy. I think some of the covered risk in there, I believe may be changing. There's a new homeowners policy that I believe that's gonna be, that title companies are gonna start using maybe within the next 6 months to a year. I haven't heard anything regarding lender policies. I believe those are still gonna remain the same.
That's great. Well, we are really thankful that you took the time today to just educate us about title policy and the process, how we can best be proactive in order to make sure that there's no holdups when we're trying to get down to closing. So, and I
It's
know,
my pleasure. And
Thank-
Dave, I'm gonna forward, I have a PowerPoint that was put together by our underwriting department with regards to endorsements.
Yeah.
So the cover page, it's from a few years ago, has a name of a